There we go. All right, looks like it's 7 o'clock. Welcome to the June 5th, 2023 Board of Education meeting here in Sand Springs. And roll call, please.
Mullins,
Here.
Wagers. Here. Wagner,
Here.
Noggle.
Okay, if you would join me for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That opportunity for the public to be heard and no one signed in. Okay. We'll move on to our celebrations. We have several Pace Setter awards. And we'll start with.
I got it. I want to start off though, because if I was looking at the application process first, I was like, what is it? Why do we do this? That's what it says on it. What does the Sandite Pace Setter Award? It says it is a monthly award event that honors Sand Springs public school faculty and staff. Here's the good part. Who have gone above expectations while representing Sand Springs public schools throughout the current or previous school year. And what a pleasure it is tonight that I get to present one of these Sandite Pace Setter Awards to one of our superstars, Kendra Roulette. Come on up here, join me. Because when I see that above expectations, and my goodness, she sets the bar really high for herself. And she exceeds that every year. And I appreciate Mr. Ryan Bivens for making the nomination. And basically there's something got me wrong with what he said. Because it says over 20 years, I mean, you have not been, well, you're not that old.
It's my 21st year at Charles Page, but thank you for that.
So much more. But what Ryan said that Kendra does is kind of what it says, expectations exceed them all the time. When Kendra's on the job, she takes care of the National Honor Society, has for years. And I'm just going to read what it says because it's wonderful. And I want you to join us too, because you might want to say something very nice about this young lady. But it says, Kendra has been a guiding light for our students, staff, and families in public schools for over 20 years. During much of that time, she has been the National Honor Society sponsor at Charles Lake High School. In this role, Kendra has been responsible for advising and overseeing activities, promoting academic excellence, big deal, and providing students with the opportunity to be recognized for achievements and contributions to their school and the community. Kendra is an outstanding educator, and Charles Lake High School is a much better place to call her. And I agree wholeheartedly. But please, if you want to add something to that.
Well, I mean, it is what it is. Kendra's a legend at CPHS, and we're lucky to work with her.
I see some of my former students up there and people that I've taught with and worked with, it's easy to do great surrounded by great people. And that's the one thing I say all the time that Sand Springs has, this is why my children went here and one still goes here, and why I recommend our school to everybody, because we do have an amazing group of people that care about our kids, and that's what's most important. So, thank you. I appreciate it.
Great.
Good job, Kendra.
Thank you, Sherry Baker or Legend. You've learned from it already, so.
Yeah, never anywhere close to that.
All right, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Actually, thank all of you guys.
Next, we're going to recognize Ms. Desiree Hall. Sorry, y'all knows. Our assistant principal at the Freshman Academy. And she's been nominated by Ms. Dawn Edelman. Would you like to come up? Awesome. Right. And then the nomination is, with her words, are Desiree Hall brings comfort to the freshman parents that are transitioning to high school. And although my daughter became a Sandite in seventh grade, I had anxiety about her coming to the freshman academy. But Desiree has superhuman power. And she makes sure all the children are in a safe environment. And from doing the manual watching of cameras, doing the hall monitoring and statistical data. And she always has time for parents to meet with students and for her to meet with parents. Oh, would you like to say something? No, I mean, no.
All right, let's see. And JJ Smith was ill today, so he wasn't able to come, even though he's showing up on the agenda.
We'll catch you next month.
Exactly.
All right. Now we're at the point where we move into our regular meeting. So anyone who would like to go do whatever they want to do besides sit here, feel free. Otherwise, we'd love to have you stay. Okay. We'll move into the next item, which is the student empowerment and staff empowerment.
So I'm going to start with Daybreak first, before Sean does his presentation for our benchmarking. Clint is here along with Becca. These are two people that kind of oversee. Clint's a counselor as well, but they kind of oversee the program, which has been great. As you know, long-time partnership with Daybreak. I couldn't even tell you, y'all probably know how many years we've had a contract. Yeah, 15 years. If you look at the stats and they have them, I know you've got a copy of them as well, but I always want to bring out that pro bono piece of the counseling effort. Obviously they have to get paid to their billing, Medicaid and all, and private insurance, but the beauty of it is they're also seeing kids that don't necessarily have those support services and could afford that. So that's been super beneficial with Daybreak in and of itself. And this year, just so you know, they are on our consent agenda, but we've also added another component to that contract that will allow us to pay them $15,000 extra to keep a counselor, excuse me, at Page Academy full time. So it's a service that we recognized was a need. Steve Purdue has been advocating for that for a couple of years now, and they have found a full-time person for that position.
She's been with Daybreak for, 10 years.
In Broken Arrow, correct?
Broken Arrow. She's making the switch. She used to do the alternative education back before she moved here, and she's super excited. And she is an amazing, amazing addition.
So got to meet her. I'm just super excited about the fact that they're present. So I don't know if you have any questions about these guys, but they come just to make sure that if you have questions, they're here to answer those.
Thank you for
Thank you.
Wow.
We ever see you guys.
Yeah, we do. We appreciate the partnership. So we're happy that y'all are happy.
And then the other part, I'm going to turn the floor over to Sean Beard. He's going to talk about our benchmark comparison. A couple of months ago, we talked, school report card and all those things. And we always kind of minimize that data because number one, it comes so late. And secondly, it doesn't give us a lot of prescriptive data. Whereas our benchmarking component does. So Sean, if you don't mind taking it away, that'd be great.
So something that's gonna be a little bit different this time than what we've done in years past is that the data that you're gonna be looking at is coming out of NWEA, for the elementary at least. And NWEA is the company that we switched to this year for our RSA data, for the Reading Proficiency Act and for math benchmarks. And so, the reports that we draw out of NWA are slightly different. So what I ended up having to do was to compile the data from a spreadsheet and put it into charts here so that you guys can see. So what we're looking at here on each of these charts for kindergarten through fifth, this is a RIT score comparison. And a RIT score is basically kind of like as your child grows and you go to the doctor and you measure the child's height and weight compared to where they are on the scale for where they should be for their age. A RIT score is sort of a growing scale that follows the child from kindergarten up through fifth grade. So as you can see over here on the left, the numbers that you're seeing there, they're kind of possibly random looking to you guys, but that is a RIT score comparison. And as I go through the grades, that scale will go up. Each of these scales shows you in blue, it shows you the national average that students achieved. In red, that is the benchmark level that's expected at the RIT score level. And then the goal is where our kids are achieving. So on the left, you've got fall, middle is winter, and then spring is on the right. So you can see that as far as kindergarten kids, our kids are at that benchmark or above. And then as we go through the years, we see some of the things that we kind of expected to see, especially coming out of COVID, is that while the first grade is still hanging fairly stable, and as they grow throughout the year, we're still seeing some things in second grade that we kind of expected that came out of COVID.
I would add, when you're looking at those charts, how we typically measure growth, you would expect to see the higher bars in the spring, but you're not, because the expectations are different. So the RIT score average is going to stay pretty stable in fall, winter, spring, because you're hitting, you want to hit that, probably saying this wrong, median, like that score that hits the national average or the benchmark, whichever. They're all pretty close, but you're not going to see growth going across.
Sure, I'll probably just miss this and I apologize.
Sure.
What is the benchmark again? I get the national, I get the SAM.
So the benchmark is the level at which that's the level at which our kids should be performing.
How do we determine that? Or how is that determined?
That's determined by NWEA based on national comparisons as far as kids at the grade level they are, the level of attainment they are, and the subject level that we're testing.
Different than national.
The national averages is how other kids compare to our kids. So while the red is the benchmark level that they need to meet at that grade level, the blue are other kids across the country. The gold is our kids.
Okay.
I didn't explain that very well. That's what that is.
I thought I understood it, but it's not got, just saying.
And so as we go up into third grade, you can see that the kids that were already with us pre-COVID, they're still performing at or above that benchmark. And then when we go into math, we see a little bit about the same thing. Kindergarten is doing pretty strong. We see some growth from fall to winter to spring, first grade. And then as we kind of expect with that second grade group, which I have a comment about that in just a minute, they're a little bit below that benchmark and that national average. Third grade is coming back up, and then fourth grade, and then fifth grade. One of the things that we do have out of this new program that I'm really expecting to be a fortunate piece is that when we switched from AIMSweb, which was our old testing instrument, to NWEA, one of the things that was a big selling point for us is that we can pull reports from that will indicate for us how kids will be expected to perform on the OSTP and the ACT. So we're kind of anxious to get those test scores back from the state to kind of see how their actual testing performance in the state exam at the end of the spring compares with what they did inside here with NWEA. And if what we expect to see is there, then that's going to give us a greater tool to kind of work with kids as they move through fall to winter to spring, to kind of pinpoint what specific things that we need to work on to help them to have a higher attainment on the state test. So that's elementary. Before I go on to secondary, do you guys have any questions? Secondary benchmarks, I didn't want to bore you with like boom, 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 grade. So this comes out of a different tool. This comes out of Edmentum. We use ExactPath to do our benchmarks in Edmentum. So what you're seeing here, these are reading scores from fall to winter to spring. Testing window 1 is fall. Test window 2 is winter. Testing window 3 is spring. And this is a combination of 6 through 12 ELA performance. And as you can see, the band for the 75th to 99th percentile is growing. The 50th to 74th percentile is a little stable, and the band the lighter band for the 25th to 49th percentile is shrinking, which is something that we expected to see. We're seeing kids moving out of those lower percentiles, moving into the median or the upper percentiles. So we can see that growth. And then the same thing with math. We're seeing some growth there as well, decreasing the 25th to 49th percentile, and then increasing the 75th to 99%. Any questions on this? We will be, just so you guys know, next year at this time, I know you're looking forward to June 2024, but anyway, next time we look at this, we'll be looking at a different instrument altogether because we are switching to IXL for our benchmarks for secondary. So that's a different tool altogether, but we should see similar reports.
So you're looking at a district overview. What happens at student level, each one of those bars represents a quartile of students. And so you can break that down into individual testing scores. So when we say our benchmarks are prescriptive, what you can do is break those down by individual and actually prescribe what components, what standards they're not doing so great on. You could look at a class of teachers, groups of classrooms, go, oh, they're doing better in the teaching of fractions versus whatever the standards are. So again, it's prescriptive versus, yeah.
And likewise, like to give you an example, Jay and Carrie have worked together before to pinpoint specific kids that are in SPED to determine those that could achieve the greatest amount of growth if given the attention for the specific skills. So you can do that with this kind of data, but you can also do that with the state testing. So
This is compiled for 6th through 12th.
6th through 12th.
Together.
yes. And I had originally broken it out, and I can still break it out for you if you'd like to see that. But the last couple of times I've done this, it was a 40-slide slideshow, and I didn't want to do that to you guys tonight. So
But I guess I look at that because you and Superintendent Durkee and whomever else are looking at those grade levels to see if we have irregularities or things like that happening in them.
yeah, like, for instance, we would look at that by site. So 6 through 8, ELA, 6 through 8 math to determine the kids that need the greatest attention. And we're also in discussion right now. Jay and I have been talking a lot because he's the district testing coordinator. Talking a lot about longitudinal impacts that we see from elementary to middle school to high school to have those types of discussions. So one of the things that we're doing in August this year is we're going to do a kind of refresher training on Solution Tree, which is our the company that we've received training on in RTI, response to intervention. And so we're going to use those conversations to kind of take a look back of what we've done in the past 6 or 7 years with RTI, take a look at this kind of data and determine what kinds of impacts we can make in our intervention schedules and our daily classrooms. Question. And then the next part.
Yeah.
Yes. So on the dropout and high school remediation report, the thing you have to remember about this data is this is data that comes to us a year later. So in essence, basically, we can't give a dropout report on kids for 2023 because we still have kids that are going through credit recovery, summer school, to obtain credits. So the data that we look at each year at this time, this is for 21-22, out of 1,823 kids, and that is 9 through 12, we had a dropout rate of 2.9%. And the breakdown over here on the right gives you an idea of dropouts grades 7 through 12. I said 9 through 12 though, because we didn't have any dropouts in grades 7 or 8. So we have a 3% rate, roughly 2.9% rate. Out of that, in comparison to years past, 17-18 through 21-22, you can see the differences here. The one thing that you're going to notice is that it looks like 21-22 has a greater rate of enrollment. We did grow, if you remember, outside after COVID. This is not dropouts. This is our population. Okay. So if you remember during COVID, we had sort of a slump there. And then in 21-22, we rebounded. And then when you look at that dropout rate per year, our dropout rate actually went down even though our population went up. And then if you look out, at dropout gender by year, males are in blue, females are in red, and then of course you have the total. And we do see a greater decrease in dropouts by males between 21 and 22. And then females, there was a small drop there, but overall we have drop. And then the total number, as I said.
What's glaring is, males are more at risk to drop out than females overall.
I also think it's important to note too, we're working really hard to track our Tulsa Boys Home boys when they leave us because they are so transient before they come to us. And then after they leave, sometimes in past, they might have been counting as dropouts. And now we're working really hard to make sure, like if another district sent us a records request, that they've moved on somewhere else. But because that's kind of through DHS more than us, sometimes we don't always catch those numbers. So
So if they leave us via the boys home and don't show up in another district across the state, then the state recognizes that child as a dropout. So that's this, I mean, that's part of what we do because we know that's going to happen at the Tulsa Boys Home, but it still is important to make sure we're delivering appropriate educational services. But we just know that's going to be an effect that we're going to see because we sometimes, a lot of times, don't see where those boys land. So.
And then this is a measure of dropouts by grade and year. And like I said, anybody blue is the number of dropouts below grade 9. Of course, you'll notice that for years 20, 21, and then 22, the one we're looking at now, we didn't have any. And we've seen a little bit of a sizable change in the kids that drop out the closer to their senior. So you'll notice that those that were juniors in 21 and those that were juniors in 22 have dropped a little bit. And then, of course, we've had a significant decrease in the number of seniors that drop out in their graduation.
So I don't know if you have this, I should know this, Sean, graduation rate, you mind explaining why graduation rate is different that you might see on the report card versus dropout rate?
So the dropout rate here, what you do is they take into consideration all dropouts for that year, not just dropouts for the seniors that are graduating. So what you might be looking at, which like the reason I'm reporting kids grades 7 through 12 is because the dropout report requires that reporting statistic. But the graduation rate is the number of kids that graduate with their cohort. So the reason that there's a difference there is because we're not just looking at seniors, we're looking at grades technically 6 through 12. So,
When does a student become a dropout?
well, a student becomes a dropout when they no longer attend or matriculate with a specific system. So that's one of the reasons that we try to track and make sure that once a child leaves our district, that we can determine that they've
So
entered somewhere else in the
it's a month. We don't see for a month or they drop out, or is that time weighted?
Well, if we don't see them for a month, technically we have to drop them from roll.
Okay.
So if they haven't done substantial completion of work, then they're going to be a dropout. The other thing that's factored into the graduation rate is our cohort. So we're now getting credit for kids that take 5 years or 6 years versus just they have to graduate in 4, which for a lot of kids, that's not feasible. And now, I mean, we now have a new special ed criteria that says that, I mean, you can talk about that. The criteria for graduation, and getting a diploma is now different than how we used to look at it. So you might describe the transition academy.
Sure. So, starting next year, we're gonna have a new program, called the Sandyke Transition Academy for our students who are 18 to 22 years old, who are, typically being educated through alternative standards. So they don't take the OSTP, they actually take a test called OAP, which is an alternate test. These are your students that have the most significant disabilities. And the focus of the Transition Academy is going to be more on independent living and job skills, with the hopes that we're getting them employed in the Sand Springs community after they get finished at their 22nd year. The great thing is that the state recognized last year at this time, if we would have kept one of those students longer as prescribed by their IEP, even if we kept them and the team decided that we should keep them, it was a dropout. Now the state actually took care of that. And so those students will not be counting as a dropout. There will actually be an alternate diploma starting next school year that those students will get because they aren't graduating with a standard diploma. They're not meeting graduation requirements for Algebra 2, geometry, all of those things. So we're really excited about that because the state recognized we're asking you to keep these students and we should be keeping them and getting them as much assistance as we can for those next 4 years, and then they won't count as a dropout. I do want to also speak on the enrollment side. If we do drop someone, after that 10 days of non-attendance, and then 3 months later, we get a records request, we go fix that and we change that. So it's not like once you mark dropout, that's the end of it. We're cleaning that data up right now for this school year for students that maybe they even left in September or October, but we did get a records request. So just to answer that.
And yeah, I'm glad you said that, because as long as they complete their number of credits that are required for graduation with their cohort, then they're not considered a dropout for that cohort year. Once a student enters a ninth grade with a group of, as a group, that becomes a cohort, a graduation cohort.
Prior to last year that we were graduating, the state allowed us to graduate students with severe disabilities as with the standard diploma. And
And
then
expected us to.
and expected it to. And so that was a change the state made based on just different interpretation of law.
But I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know what the cutoff is after their graduation cohort graduates, and I don't know if it's by the next October 1 deadline. September
I
1.
was gonna say September.
So if they don't complete credits with their cohort by September, then they're considered a dropout for the year, and then they become a fifth year cohort.
So we have seniors now that are in summer school, finishing out their last half, 1.5 credits, that we still get credit for on-time graduations for them as long as we get them finished by, and we try to get them finished by August 1st.
What's your summer school enrollment, Jay?
We have 154 kids in summer schools.
Good thing he was on the rehire.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Mullins.
Okay.
Are those, and I love your story, Carrie, that those students that are 18, 19, 20, 21, that we are making life skills for them to make them productive citizens.
Mhm.
Are they included in our ADM and we are funded for the state?
Yes.
And is their count or their multiplier, whatever it's called?
Yep. Counted.
That, so.
So, and that's been a trick because we need to make sure we're offering adequate and supportive services to them. And so right now, I think we'll start next year with 3 students that will be in transition academies.
Essentially 4, yes, that's right.
4. So if you think about that, that's a big deal because for 4 students, we're going to have, I think we've at least 1 job coach
Mhm.
and a teacher.
We're working on probably 2 job coaches is probably the direction that we're gonna go. And so, and then I've got a partnership with the high school that we're gonna have 2 senior peer tutors that both want to be special educators that are gonna come in. I'm really excited about this. I could talk about it all night, but I won't. We have partnerships with some different local organizations that are gonna partner with us to work on job skills. We've got a partnership with the Sand Springs Home where they're gonna let us come in and use one of their cottages. So we're gonna learn how to strip a bed and we're gonna do the laundry for the bed and then we're putting that back on the bed because my goal, my personal goal is that these students don't finish with us when they're 22 and then just go sit at home because they have so much more to offer and our community is always so responsive to our students that I can't wait to walk into every business in downtown Sand Springs and see one of these students employed there because that is our goal is after 22, you're going to see them when you walk into the coffee shop or you're going to see them when you walk into the hair salon and they're going to be a staple in our community out in the.
You may have more phone calls now that you.
Sure, that's right. I'll take all partnerships that anybody.
Some of those specific skills, you might have parents at home watching that
Right.
want to strip and make their bed.
I will say this too, just to make sure that you all understand the new law. A student who has already graduated, if they're still under 22, they can actually rescind their diploma and come back. So the cohort, this could be bigger than 3 or 4 students because they could potentially come back if that was something that they decided that they wanted to do.
Great debate would be rescission of your standard diploma.
Sure.
Because
Versus the alternate.
to do that, then your diploma is alternate, not standard.
And the other thing that they're building into this is alternate, since we have alternate standards, we're now all gonna have alternate courses. So for example, right now, a student who might be in this class for students with significant disabilities shows that they're taking Algebra 2, but now it's gonna show functional math skills 1, 2, 3, 4. So their courses are actually even gonna be different now. And it's exciting. It's time
It's
for
time.
the state to.
That's a cool story, and I'm watching the reporter sitting behind me. Surprise. That makes you sure.
So we're devoting some space to it and we don't have it all figured out yet. We're working through the space that we're designing to make that doable.
The last bit that I have for you is the remediation report. Don't worry, that may hurt me. I can stay up. Okay. The remediation, when you're looking at these numbers, first of all, this is a report on how many of our high school students entering college for the first time in the fall of their freshman year. How many of them needed remediation in either science, English, math, or reading? The one thing that I will point out to you is that first column where you look at the fall first-time degree-seeking freshman count. That was for the fall of 2021. So these are our 2021 grads. So this is the year that we graduated a group of kids during COVID, which is also when our enrollment for the district was also at one of its lowest points. So when you see that we only had 125 freshmen entering that fall of that year, that's because we had a lower student count that year, that previous year. Needless to say, don't look at the percentages for that reason too, because it takes into consideration the number of students that need remediation against the total. So while it says that we have a 0.8% increase in kids that needed science, we had 1 child out of 125 versus 0 out of 158 the previous year, or 0 out of 178 in the previous year. English, we went from 30 in 2019 to 10 in 2020, and then 8 in the fall of 2021. We also saw a decrease in math. But we saw a relatively stabilized level of kids that needed reading from 20 to 21. So we're really hoping that this is a trend where we'll see this to continue to go down. So any questions about the remediation?
What colleges do you get that from?
This is based on, I believe, Oklahoma colleges, and it comes from the data comes from the Oklahoma State Regents for Higher Ed. So I believe it's any state institution that's reporting back to the OSHRHE.
If we to Columbia, you probably would be on that list.
Probably not.
National-
However, we can get similar data from the National Student Clearinghouse, which I report back to Stan and Ryan and Ms. Durkee every fall and every spring, which I just shared a report on that to you guys. So, any questions? This is always the fun stuff. So,
Well, the other thing I would say too, there's a pattern of how we plug kids into programs that also make them marketable out of high school with skill sets that they don't necessarily have. So, we've talked our Tulsa Tech programming. And that makes a difference. And it's not really, I hate the competition with college versus not college necessarily. I'm not saying either or is good or bad. It's not a judgment call. It's really about tailoring the program to what the kids are interested in and what they want to do. I say that all the time, we need to make sure our kids are marketable in the economy that we have in front of us. So
that again may be another reason that you saw a decrease too. In addition to that being a COVID year, you might have had some kids that didn't seek out a degree at a university, but they went to tech. And they completed.
well, when you see the capstone data of what we demand from our kids going out of Charles Page High School, all of them, our goal is 100% to have a capstone. There's over 90% that actually do. And so you just have to, data's a little bit tricky to interpret because you have to take all of those in of what makes a high school a high school. I'm pretty proud of what our team's doing.
So one of the next things that we're doing, we just wrote another grant to expand our aeronautics program.
Any questions for Sean?
Any other questions, comments?
Go with a lot, but that's okay.
Oh.
Let's go sit down.
Very nice.
That was great information, and especially on that.
So that concludes the staff and student empowerment piece, unless you guys have questions.
Move on to resource innovation.
Yeah, maybe the big news here is school insurance, honestly, and I gave you a lot of information that talks about the why of premiums going up, skyrocketing really. So overall, across the state, the average increase in deductible for each school district was about 25%. Part of it was because of property assessment, meaning property values have increased, and the other part of that is reconstruction after a weather occurrence is a lot costlier than it used to be. So as we're working through the bond issue that we're going to propose next year to the public, the cost they're asking us to consider have gone from 200 per square foot as we were planning the freshman academy in 2019 to 400 to 450 per square foot. So it's almost doubled. Meaning that in Oklahoma, we have a lot of weather occurrences, and when those happen and there's a lot of destruction, the most recent is the tornado that hit Shawnee. The cost of rebuilding is incredible. And so, you know, I've talked a lot over the years about OSIG being that financially stable component. As you probably are well aware, OSMART went under a couple of years ago and left a lot of schools high and dry because they couldn't sustain low premiums. So this is a fix to make sure that OSIG is substantially stable enough that if we have an occurrence, that we can collect what we're due. So while we hate it, one way we're trying to mitigate the premium a little bit is raising our deductibles. It's not super hard for Sand Springs Public Schools to come up with 75,000 or 50,000 in a deductible to decrease our rate, and it took us down by about half of what it would have been. So I think that was a good balance. That was a suggestion honestly from Cindy Griggs. Just let's take a peek at your deductibles. So that's what we chose to do. You'll see that the OSIG contract on items 53 and 54. 53 is a resolution to join, because remember, OSIG is a member-owned group. So we had to pass a resolution to join a group, and then of course the contract that would define our rates. So that's really the content. There's really not another provider in Oklahoma, and insurance companies don't like Oklahoma very much because they lose money because of storms and tornadoes and freezing and all of the elements. So,
Mr. Are you still on the OSIG board?
and yeah, so I have a little bit of intel, which helps. I'm very appreciative about that opportunity. You know, my predecessor served on that board for years and actually started OSIG from the ground up. It's been fun to learn about the reasons why the fluctuation, in this case, the increase over the last 3 years, maybe. I was commenting to Ms. Newby, when I started, our premium was less than 500,000. And in 7 years, we're at over $1 million premium per year for property and liability, which is tremendous. But I also know over time, OSIG has given member rebates when they've had good years, but you can't continue to do that and remain stable in the insurance business. So, yeah, so that's bad news. This whole piece. Vernon Florence newsletter is always one of my favorites. Still cautious about inflation and unemployment rate. I can tell you that Vernon Florence probably say we can expect some sort of landing of some sort with our economy based on his predictions, and he's been around the block a time or two. And so, you know, he's always suggesting preparing for a downturn. If you look at some of the structures of the data that he sends, there is definitely a pattern of what you see when a revenue failure happens. And so we just prepare for it. We just make sure that we're stable enough so that if that were to occur, we can manage our budget and be continually fiscally stable, which we are. So that's always a good little nugget to review, in my opinion. And then the one thing I'm super proud of is an email attachment from our auditors, Bledsoe, Hewitt, and Gulletson. And I just think it's important to know that our people take care of our auditors. These are outside auditors that don't have to say anything about how well the district runs. And when we continue to provide backup data and diligence about how we handle our financial pieces, it's pretty cool to see an email come back and kind of tout us for being at the top of the list of people that do it right. So, and we've got Miss Newby, she's doing a fantastic job. Claudia Smith isn't here, but, feel the need to mention her name, and Carrie that run all the federal grants. It's a chore, big chore, especially with COVID money. They've done amazing. So just a little tout for our team, our finance team.
And I just want to echo those kudos to the finance department and Michelle Labor and Miss Smith. I know she's not here, but I'm one of those nerdy number people, so I know. I appreciate the attention to detail.
It's good. Very proud of that. And that was unsolicited. I didn't say, hey, write me in the email so I can give it to the board and show them how good. Just unsolicited, which is great. Okay, so anything else about finance, you guys? Boardroom's going to be, we're shooting for the September board meeting. I would love to say July, but just don't think it's going to happen before then, but it's fabulous. It's fabulous. If you wanted to take a sneak peek, let me know, and I'd be more than happy to do a little tour with you guys, but it's coming along. Jeannie's amazing, as you know. And Dick Watts is amazing. It's going great. So, questions?
Anything else? All right, item number 7, empowering families and communities.
So summer programs, man, they're in full swing. Jamie Conrad, I should have gotten in trouble too. We do awards for grant applicants by the amount that they've gleaned from applying. And so we honor the teachers every year at the end of the year for applying for grants. It's part of our continuous strategic improvement plan. And we didn't think about, I'm not going to take full responsibility because none of us thought about it, but Jamie Conrad, that grant yields over $1 million when she writes it. She wrote one in 2022 that helped us continue the Garfield Northwoods component. And then she just wrote a second one because she's glutton for punishment, I think, to cover Angus and Limestone. It's amazing. I really feel fairly confident. I'm going to say that, knock on some wood really fast, because we'll see. Those are competitive. So you apply and you hope you get them, which would be a coup because, as you all know, COVID relief runs out in 2024, and that would be a great way to continue service delivery to kids on the south side of the river. So our goal, if this one's approved, is to write yet another one for ECC and Pratt and get all elementaries covered for after school and summer programs for kids. So she's high energy. She's amazing. Yeah, very creative. That's true. Credit recovery in summer school for first time credit is underway at Charles Page right now. There were 15 kids that showed up today, and a couple called and said, I'll be there tomorrow. So it's happening. They can do that in person and get help, or they can also access virtually, which many of them do. And how many did you say, Joey, we have?
154.
154 to be precise. Mr. Ritter has always been in charge of that program. I've just clarified our team at the high school has taken that over because he's got a new focus at Pratt, but he is going to retain district testing coordinator because for some odd reason he likes that. So that's good. I'm very appreciative.
Said about textbook.
I didn't know it was going to cause a review of 60 textbook companies.
Nobody's gonna feel it next year.
Yeah, next year's not bad.
We'll see, but I'm proud of him because, listen, it's a big deal to sit on the state textbook committee. So he got that appointment because I was allowed up and said, I've got the perfect person for you. And he is, by the way, but he's gonna be a busy guy. Enrollment Center, we're accepting transfer applications right now. And we'll begin processing those July 1st is when the portal opens, I think.
Yeah, so our principals are already accepting. We just can't enter any new transfers into the state transfer portal until July 1. So, and I checked while we were sitting here, we have over 100 new transfer applications already since June 1.
That's super good, but we have to just keep on accepting until we don't have capacity, which is the reason we update the capacity report. I have to tell him, Carrie, it's really not her, but she sent out the capacity report to principals. And ECEC was showing full, which is not.
It was.
Okay, emailed her really quick and said, hey, And we are not full at ACEC because 4-year-olds, they don't enroll. Like we know kindergarten because you have those people, but you don't have the 4s right now. So that's great. We have space. We have space there. So
And if a student would transfer in last year, they don't have to reapply?
They do not.
They're not- So that's not in that 100 that.
No,
you-
these are all new. Now, I will say there have been a handful of parents that we've had to go through and call and say, you didn't have to do this, you're good to go. But there are over 100 that are new transfer
All
apps,
grades?
all over the place.
Our
Scattered
enrollment
everywhere.
increased 200 last year, and I would attribute a portion of that to transfers coming in. Which we're happy to take. It's great. The only way that you wouldn't be transferred in automatically is if there was an attendance or behavior issue. And there have been a few
Been a few.
of those as well. So, I mean, if you don't come, we can't teach you. And that's important. So I think, let's see, I think that's it. Unless you have a question about families and communities.
Comments and questions? All right, item number 8, health and safety.
So again, I just wanted to continue to mention, we're welcoming an additional school resource officer who will be stationed at Clydewood Middle School next year through a grant that Sokol wrote. Jonathan Noah is his name. He actually came to Sand Springs from Sapulpa's police department. They live here. Wife works at the home, I've learned. But he'll be joining us, and of course, Harmon will still be at the high school next year. And then Marcus Owens has resigned, will be filling that position. And that person will be focused on our elementary side. So we are increasing by 1 for resource officer, which is good. And then the next part of that is new education package that the legislature just passed includes a safety component whereby each school district will receive $96,000. Even Stephen, regardless of size. While it would be great to have it, depending on size, we could have maybe glean a little bit more money. We'll take it, which means we'll probably add an additional staff to the number of school resource officers from 3. And I feel like we can probably up that to 2 additional. So that would make it 5 district wide. So it's a coup for us. I believe that money is a kind of a 3-year plan. We'll see where that goes from here.
Any other comments, questions? All right, on to the consent agenda.
So I would bring your attention to item number 22. Those particular policies were in first read or are in first read today. These are all required by law. The tobacco smoke-free environment, that was one that Christy Newby revamped a little bit. She is chasing after what's called a TSEC grant to help us glean equipment for our new employee health center. So that was required, and we would like to if you are so moved to take those policies and go ahead and vote on them for first read and pass tonight, that would be great. So she'd go ahead and get that grant started. And then the other 2, restraint and seclusion, corporal punishment are both required by law. So these were 2 that Ms. Slade were worked on. So if you have any questions, that would be great to get those on the books as well, because they are required by law. And I don't believe we had those in policy prior to today.
Correct, and they're both in reference to students with disabilities, students that are on IEPs. OSSBA sent some information out to us recently. Those were enacted in March of 2020, and the state had a lot going on in March of 2020. And so I think that OSSBA recognized that a lot of districts did not get those updated like they needed to, and so they've circled back around to it. And so they're both really just speaking to thou shalt not do these things with students with disabilities. And so the read that you have is what the OSSBA recommendation was for the language.
So that would be up to you all to go ahead and move those to tonight. So if you're so moved to approve the consent agenda, specifically mention those first read policies to be approved tonight. If you'd like to do that, that would be great. Attendance waiver, item number 23. This would be required by board approval These are funneled through the chronic absenteeism committee to apply for a waiver, but those waivers have to be board approved. However, Sean and his team vet all of those, so that would be board recommendations tonight.
Are those requested by the parent? No.
No,
It's based on, student attendance and, rates of chronic absenteeism. And then the waiver, the way the policy works with the state is that a student that has a chronic or life-threatening illness that would prevent them from attending, those types of absences can be waived. That can be something that's designated through a health plan or a 504 or an IEP. And basically what happens then is each site is instructed to look through their chronic absenteeism data to identify kids that might qualify based on absences, and then to look back over health plans and other absences to determine which students would qualify under that policy. You don't automatically qualify under the policy just because you're a chronic absence because you have a cold quite a bit. But if a student has a life-threatening illness like a diagnosis of cancer or life-threatening like seizures or something like that, which is typical of what we'll see, then those types of absences can be waived.
which funnel into right now, currently, there's a chronic absenteeism component of the school report card as well. So it's important that we make sure we're vetting those that we could have waived. Items 24 through 27 are, I'm going to mention it, it's the operating agreements with Community Action Project. Those were set in motion years ago as we developed that partnership with the Early Childhood Education Center, and those have not changed at all. Other than, I would say, the footprint of CAP has diminished, and not just really this year. So they used to occupy 50% of that space, and now they occupy 25% just because of enrollment. So that hasn't changed since last year, though. Item number 32, this is just a fun one. This isn't necessarily new. However, we wanted approval for American Heritage Bank to have the whole sponsorship of 97 rivalries, which I think we possess now. Don't we, Carrie? It's ours, I'm pretty sure. So anyway, they're the sponsor. We want to keep it. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. No, item number 34 would be the service agreement with Daybreak. And I just want to mention again, additional 15,000 that we typically don't pay. We're going to hopefully ask for approval for Page Academy. Let's see.
Item 31, Sperry, I think the new one. Do we get kids from Sperry for alternative education?
We can. So if we do, they enter into a co-op and they can send kids to us. They don't always. So there's occasions that, maybe one of those districts are part of a co-op that gives them the availability, but they don't always. It just depends. That changes year to year. Item 38 is new. Apparently Claudia Smith went to a federal program, kind of a lunch and learn. And this was a component that has been federally mandated for some time. However, it was brought to the attention of the state that we have not been doing this. So we require board approval from the local district to publicly note that we're going to apply for federal grants. So this would be Title I, Title II, Title IV, anything that Claudia Smith manages. This is a public notice that says, hey, by the way, we can apply for federal grants. So that's new that you haven't seen before, but required. I think that is it. I need to bring to your attention, unless you have a question.
Any questions?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as listed with the exception of, I forget what number it was. Item number 22, and maybe we just take that out and address that as a separate motion afterwards.
Great.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Vote, please. Molly.
Aye.
Wagers.
Aye.
Lyman. Aye.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the first read of item number 22, the first read of the revised policies listed in the agenda. That work?
That works.
I will second.
Any discussion? Okay, vote please. Mullen.
Aye.
Wager.
Aye.
Whack. Aye. Okay. We are on item 42.
And item 42 is about asking for approval for reemployment of administrators, certified teachers, support personnel that are on not a temporary contract, but permanent contracts for the 23-24 school year. Including J Road. Yes.
I would move to approve the proposed reemployment of recommended administrators, certified teachers, and support personnel for 23-24 school year.
One second.
The motion is second. Mullen. Wagers.
Aye.
Wagon. Aye.
Okay, and then item number 43, we have to separate those two items. So item 43 is really about temporary teachers. Those are teachers who have been employed with us for 4 semesters or less. By law, we have to separate the career from the temporary to put it shorten the explanation. But it has to be separated by law. So we'd ask for approval to reemploy the temporary teachers for 23-24.
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion on number 43 that we reemploy the temporary teachers for 23-24 school year as noted.
I will second.
Okay. Motion is second. Any other questions? Discussion? Vote please. Mullen.
Aye.
Wagers.
Aye.
Wagon. Aye. Okay, item 44.
Yes, and so this is your option to go in first executive session to discuss the temporary teachers for employment. These are the new folks. Of course, 46 is also proposed executive session for employment recommendations for those that are support staff. So there's two lists of new people. One is certified that will be temporary teachers, and the other one is support recommendations. And of course, 45 and 47 would be the approval of those employees.
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion that we go into executive session to discuss the temporary teacher employment recommendations. Item 44, and also to discuss employment recommendations for the support portion.
I'll second.
And a motion is second. Vote please. Mullen.
Aye.
Wagers.
Aye.
Wagon. Aye.
Hey, I think that we're back online now.
Okay, we returned from executive session, discuss employment, and no votes were taken. So we will move to. 45. 45.
Okay, I make a motion to approve the hiring of temporary teachers of the employment recommendations.
No second.
We have a motion, a second. Vote please.
Mullen,
Aye.
Wagers,
Aye.
Wagner,
Aye.
47. As Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the employment recommendation. And listed as item number 47.
I will second.
All right, motion, a second. Wait, vote please.
Mullen,
Aye.
Wagers, Wagner.
Aye.
Mr. Turkey, thank you for, and your staff for filling all the positions as quickly as possible. Thank you for that.
Well, I think it helps to be posted early.
I recognize not all school districts are as attractive as we are in getting staff. So thank you for that.
Welcome. Item number 48 is atypical, you guys, because it's to approve or disapprove or to rescind a resignation by Kirsten Maddox. She is, and I would like for you to approve that, she will be teaching the CTE business class at Charles Page High School next year. Because Andrea Bays, as you know, retired last month. She was looking for business because that's her degree program. So she's an accountant by nature, I think, and suits her well. So that came open and she's asking the board to rescind that resignation.
I'll move to approve the rescission of the resignation of Kirsten Maddox.
I'll second. Where was she at before?
She's at the high school. She's teaching math.
Okay.
I have a motion and a second. Vote please.
Mullen,
Aye.
Wagers,
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye. Item number 49.
Okay. Sand Springs Public Schools operate under the School Budget Act. We are now required to conduct a public hearing on the budget. Does anyone wish to comment on the budget? If not, we will close the public hearing and the CFO will brief the board on the budget. Cool. Thank you for that.
You've all been given your packets in advance, so if you will bring in your packets. I will go through the budget and any changes that we're gonna have this year. Page number 4, which is actually looking at Fund 11, Summary of Estimated Revenues. The budget is 44.3 million. This is a decrease of 412,000 from the second revised budget this last year, or this year, which will end in June, and an increase of 1.2 million from the original budget presented in June for this current year we're in. I'm projecting, and again, this is a dance that I do as we go through this, especially with ESSER and ARP funds. But I'm projecting 5.6 million of a fund balance, which is showing stability from FY 22-23. The balance would actually be closer to the district's maximum of 14%, but we have at least 620,000 ESSER funds that we spend, we float, we spend it, and then we get reimbursed after. So it will come back in just like this year. When we floated last year, the funds will come back in July-ish of 23. So we do see the dip because we're floating the funds and then it comes right back up. So our fund balance is very healthy. We anticipate an increase in funding based on this budget of 3.5 million based on the state legislation that was passed. The 2 million anticipated to be used just with the state mandated raises for certified staff. The other 1.5 million would help with the inflationary pressures in today's economy. However, less than 2 weeks ago, we were told that it's not for sure what our calculation is going to be to get the exact amount. And I had to go ahead and pull the trigger and publish the budgets. So we accounted for 3.5 million, but we're told it could go down to 2.5 million versus 3. So we may get 1 million less. in flux is the actual calculation.
What's been difficult is there are several pots of money that they've approved. And so what you have seen, I believe, are OSSBA emails that have come from that organization that have predicted a different number than what our COSA group is predicting. And Pam Deering and the powers that be at COSA, they're ex-CFO, so they're predicting a little bit less. So we'll see. We went high because we're kind of dependent on the first indication that we were given. So padded it probably maybe a little bit. We're not sure. I was telling SSCA today, until we get our allocation, it's really hard to discern exactly how much that's going to be at this point. So the dust will settle and we should get our allocation in July. So we'll know.
Right, it shouldn't be much longer than we would know. Just to say, as much as we are all grateful for anything that the state is doing, and especially for the teacher raises, just to put it in perspective. Were we to get the 3.5, about, like I said, about 2 million of that is anticipated to go for the state mandated raises. The 1.5 million is only 3.4% of our total budget. And so if we do get the 1.5 million, it's just 3.4%. If you take out personnel, then it would be approximately 7% that we would have to work with. If it goes down to the million, which we hope it doesn't, then we're looking at 1% of the total budget that we have and 2.5% if you take out personnel. So it will help with inflation some. Inflation, I'll talk about it later in general fund, but it'll help with it some, but they certainly, they did their best and we're grateful for it, but they give us 20% for all the inflation now, but we're grateful for what we got. Student enrollment is projected to hold steady for from FY 22-23. Possibly Superintendent Dakin can talk to you more about that, but possibly a little increase, but it should be close to about the same.
Transfer, you have to say with open transfers, you really just don't know. So we know what our capacity is. We know we're not going to over accept based on that, but it's still, you just don't know. I actually didn't know we had 100 transfers already. So here we go. We got.
Any questions on general fund revenue before I move on? Next page, on page 5. It's basically the same. Our budget is 44.3 million. This is a decrease of 412,000 from the second revised budget of this year and an increase of 1.2 from the original budget for this year. Personnel expenses from ESSER and ARP funds have been transitioned back. That's the funding cliff that we all heard about, and everybody warned us that make sure that if you've got salaries out of those funds that you transfer them back if you don't want to have to let those people go. We have planned for that in the budget for this year so that there's not going to be any type of a funding cliff. District deadline to spend the remainder of these federal funds is June of 24. Inflationary factors for fuel, transportation, maintenance, and utilities have been proactively built into the budget based on last year's expenses. As far as inflation is concerned, I think right now, actually, since I've typed up these budget notes, more along the lines of 5% is what they're anticipating. I said 6. So what I basically did, rather than building more inflation into the budget, I just basically said, as we encounter spikes, I will make sure that I adjust the budget as necessary. And I think that last year should be a pretty good indicator of what we'll face this year. Okay, any questions on that before I move to building fund?
Under instruction expenditure, that's based on the salary schedule with the increase that came from the legislature, and you've already plugged that into the
Yes.
magic formulas.
Right. That's where you see that jump from instruction from second revised in.
Mhm.
That's why I said there's going to be about 2 million of that anticipated to be just for the certified salary increases.
I would mention 2620 on that page as well, operation of building services. So you see a drop of from 5.3 to 4.6, but remember a lot of COVID money was tagged for operation building facilities. And so that's the reason HVAC was such a big deal for us, camera system, those kinds of things that we did improvements on based on that. So there's a decrease because we won't have that money available here.
Is that where the electric and gas bill come out of as well?
Yeah.
Probably is, but-
Yeah.
Yes, and those still are not, unfortunately. Any more questions? Okay. Actually, let's go to the co-op number, Fund 12. And it basically has stayed the same. You're not going to see any swings of any significance, but I did want to point that out just in case you have any questions. For me, Bill. On Building Fund, page 7, we are anticipating an increase in funding of $1 million in red bed allocations based on the state legislation. Again, we're still doing the dance. We're not for sure. We're hoping for it, but I remain conservative at this point until I know the exact allocations that we will be providing.
We still haven't received the balance of our build or red bud fund from this year, which they have signed into law with an emergency. So we're hoping to get an allocation to finish that out, that piece that we were supposed to receive in fiscal year 23.
Yes. So, I mean, as of right now, it's like 30-something thousands always received of that 450 that we budgeted. So we're ready to receive those. Let's see, the beginning fund balance projection is just slightly over $1 million, and we have included approximately $1 million in expenditures for construction costs related to the demolition of the old administration building and gym once we vacate. Any questions?
Does that include the gym?
Yeah, the grand debate's gonna be whether we do that in conjunction with the project or postpone, then, banking the public votes for that, or go ahead and demo now. One way or the other, it's gonna be demos.
We should put a placeholder with. Any more questions? Okay, child nutrition, Fund 22. It's basically going to be the same, except for the fact that we have increased their budget by 114,000 due to inflationary pressures on food costs. That is something we had y'all do a third revised budget for them this year. So I'm doing my best to go ahead and anticipate that. And so you won't have to keep approving into extra budgets. On the bond funds. Basically, everything else is just the same. It's normal, except for the new one, Fund 36, which we are anticipating will be funded in total on June 8th, just in a few days. We have already received the good faith payment of 170,000. In all total, we will receive 8.5 million, of which 2.3 approximately million will be for the NFAA lease revenue bond and 840,000 for the 9th grade STEM center bond. 3.3 million will be held in reserve for future years projects, and the remaining 2 million is our general obligation bond for current projects for the year, which is the same amount we usually get. Any questions on that? Again, debt service fund is just pretty much straightforward. It doesn't really change other than just knowing what we need to be able to service our debt. 41. And our gifts and endowments fund is basically, I plan to be about the same, but we are hoping to get more donations coming in.
So just kind of FYI, you all approved our ability to take donations on the tax credit that businesses could donate and take a straight up tax credit. We've been approved by the tax commission. Cindy's worked really hard on getting all the paperwork. So literally folks that donate straight to the district, like Webco has been a really great partner donating. They, on their donation next year, could take a 50% tax credit for the amount. So like last year was 30,000. The home is already nonprofit, so they wouldn't be able to benefit from it. But again, businesses that would want to donate to Sand Springs Public Schools would be eligible. It's just straight with a straight donation to the school without going through the foundation.
So we are hoping that more donations will come in there. Any questions on that? The insurance fund? One other thing I would like to mention very quickly is, and I know Superintendent Darkey, I've talked to her about this earlier, is I am encouraged about the fact that we are receiving, you get the investment ledger every month, but I'm encouraged that we are able to continue to get increased interest rates on our CDs. Right now, we're getting 4.75. American Heritage is working very well with us. And they also just increased our repurchase interest rate by over 400%. So it's went from 0.7 to 2.96. So that's very good. I think that puts us in a healthy position for interest and. Okay.
Any other questions for Ms. Newby?
I will make a motion to approve the budget for the 23-24 fiscal year.
I'll second that motion.
Motion is second. Vote please.
Mullen.
Aye.
Wagers.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye. Okay, items 51 and 52 about those six.
Right, so remember 51 is that resolution to join the group as a member. And then 52 is the approval for the quote, property casualty and liability and auto insurance.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution of Sand Springs Public Schools to join the Oklahoma School Insurance Group for the 23-24 school year. 51.
I'll second.
Motion is second. Vote please.
Mullen.
Aye.
Wagers.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
And now, Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the quote, even though it's gone up a whole bunch more than it should have, for the casualty liability on the insurance with the Keystone Agency with the 06 from next year.
I'll second.
All right, and the motion is second. Vote please.
Mullen.
Aye.
Wagers.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye. And let's see, now we're moving to SAG.
SAG is our workman's comp piece of our insurance. It actually went down, which is a good thing. Not enough to compensate for the increase. However, I'll take what we can get. So that would be our workman's comp piece.
Any questions? Comments?
I move to approve the renewal quote of workers' compensation insurance with OSAC for the 23-24 school year.
Second.
All right, a motion is second. Vote please.
Mullen.
Aye.
Wagers.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
And then 54 are the additional policies. One's the equal opportunity education scholarship tax credit that I just mentioned. And the other one is the adoption of adjunct teacher policy. These both were first reads last time.
I'll move to approve the new policies to the district policy.
We have a motion is second. Vote please.
Mullen.
Aye.
Wagers.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye. All right.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the contract for Superintendent Durkee. We're extremely excited to have Ms. Durkee as our superintendent. Look forward to another, what is this, 3 years? With our superintendent, I will make that motion.
I will second.
All right.
Thank you, Ms. Durkee. for
Yes,
your reports.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We have a motion and a second. Vote please.
Mullen.
Aye.
Wagers.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye. And let's see, items number 56 are both agreements with Tulsa County Industrial Authority.
Right, so those are those revenue lease bonds. 56 addresses Northwoods, which will roll off in 24. We'll pick our last payment in 24. And then 57 would be the revenue lease agreement for the new freshman academy that was constructed and completed in 2020.
When does it go off?
It rolls up in 27.
Almost number 56, that we will approve the renewal of the sublease agreement for the Northwoods project.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Vote please.
Mullins. Wagers.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Motion to approve the renewal of this agreement dated June 1st. District and Tulsa County Industrial Authority.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Vote please.
Mullins.
Aye.
Wagers.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye. Right. Any matter not known about or which could not have been reasonably foreseen prior to the posting of this meeting.
Stopped.
Any announcements?
No announcements. We'll make a motion to adjourn.
That's first. Oh, second. That'd be first also.
Okay, I have a motion second. Vote, please.
Mullins, Wagers,
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye. Very good.